welcome. In this video we are going to talk about different knitting patterns that are especially suited to be knitted with unspun yarn. Now technically you can use any knitting pattern and knit it with unspun yarn, but especially if you are just starting out using unspun yarn, I think it's very helpful to stick to knitting patterns that have been specifically designed to be knitted with unspun yarn. If you are not sure what unspun yarn actually is and why it is so special, I recommend that you have a look at this video first and then come back here afterwards. In the first video of this series, I talk all about what unspun yarn actually is and how to knit with it. And in this video, we are going to talk about different knitting patterns for unspun yarn. And towards the end of the video, I am also going to share my best tips and tricks for working with unspun yarn. Let's get started now, shall we? So the first pattern I would like to recommend is the one I am wearing right now, and it is the Timepiece Cardigan by Albina McLaughlin. Now this is a great pattern that actually comes in two yarn weight versions. So you get both a DK weight version and an Aran weight version when you purchase the pattern. And if you want to knit the pattern with unspun yarn like I did, you are going to hold the unspun yarn double and use the Aran weight version of the pattern. So the yarn I used to knit this cardigan is called Livslinje. It is Nutiden yarn from Rock Air, and this is a colorway that was part of one of the earlier collections of this year. I think it was the March collection. Now let me stand up for a minute so that you can see how the cardigan looks like. So this is it. I'm very happy with it. There is only one downside, and that is the fact that I had to crop it a bit more than I actually intended to. As you might have seen, my sleeves are only 3/4 lengths and the body is a bit cropped as well. And this is simply due to the fact that I ran out of yarn. It was my first time knitting with unspun yarn, and I purchased 300 grams of the Livslinje colorway and, like I said, held the yarn double. And yeah, this is all I could get out of the yarn. I only have like a tiny ball left, a couple of grams only, and this was all I could manage to make with this. But overall, I'm very happy. I wear this a ton. It is very lightweight, but keeps me really warm, and I can highly recommend this pattern. And if you do like the design aesthetic of Albina McLaughlin, she actually has a ton of different patterns that were knitted in unspun yarn. So you should definitely have a look at her portfolio on Ravelry, because you will find a lot of suitable patterns to be knitted with unspun yarn there. The next knitting pattern that I wanted to show you is called the Caroline Shawl, and it is a knitting pattern by Isabella Clarke. Now this is a triangular shawl that has been designed and knitted in Nutiden yarn. And what you do here is you start at the one tip on the one side and then work your way all the way across towards the other side. And since this is an asymmetrical shawl, you can make the shawl as big or as small as you like, which is always a great thing, especially if you only have a limited amount of yarn, which we all usually do. So then you could knit until you are almost out of your yarn and just custom make your size. This shawl has been knitted in Nutiden yarn as well, and I think it is even named after one of the owners of Nutiden, not Nutiden, Rock Air, who is Caroline. Isabella Clarke also has a wonderful knitting podcast here on YouTube, so if you don't know her yet, you should totally check her out. Her channel name is 100 Acre Wool, and I'm going to link it for you in the description box. She has a number of very beautiful knitting patterns available, and a lot of them were designed with Nutiden or unspun yarn. So if you like her style, you should definitely check out her portfolio. I personally really like a lot of her designs. She has several patterns available that were designed with unspun yarn, and one more that I wanted to show you is called the Hygge Hug sweater. So for this design, she held one strand of an unspun yarn together with one strand of silk mohair. And I think this looks just so sweet and cozy. I would love to make it. So another designer that knits a lot with Nutiden yarn is Vanessa Pelisa. And there are two designs of hers that I wanted to show you. The first one is this sweater, which is called the Kume Sweater. And in the pattern you get actually 4 different patterns basically. So if you purchase the pattern, you get the sweater pattern to be knitted either top down or bottom up. And you also get the cardigan pattern in 2 versions, so you can choose if you would like to knit the cardigan top down or bottom up, which I think is just great. And the second pattern by Vanessa Pelisa that I wanted to show you is this one. It is called the Coco Pillow Set, and I even have a discount code for this in case you're interested in it. So sometime last year I wrote a blog post which was called, I think, 6 knit pillow patterns that make your home feel cozy. I'm going to link it for you in the description box in case you're interested. And in this blog post, I included the Coco Pillows set. And when I contacted Vanessa Pelisa and talked to her about the blog post, she very generously set up a 25% discount code for readers of my blog post. So if you use the code Rosemary and Pines, all caps, I'm also going to put it in the description box again, you will get 25% off of the Coco Pillow set, which I think is just great. So thanks again, Vanessa. The next pattern that I would like to share with you is this hat, and it is called the Wild Posy Hat by Melody Hoffman from Bee Mandarins. So Melody is another designer that works a lot with unspun yarn, and this hat was designed with Plötulopi from Istex, which is an Icelandic brand. And I think she designed a sweater, so the Wild Posy sweater first, and afterwards created the hat pattern. And in the description she recommends that if you knitted the Wild Posy sweater and have some leftovers, you could use those to knit the hat as well, which I think is a great idea to use up your scrap yarns. And she states that if you have 1 plate of unspun yarn, this will be plenty to create a hat in either of, I think, the 3 different adult sizes that the pattern comes in. Another very popular pattern of hers that was designed with unspun yarn is her Tulip Jumper. In this case, she held 2 strands of unspun yarn with 1 strand of soft silk mohair from Knitting for Olive and created this absolutely stunning design that I would love to make someday. And another pattern that I definitely wanted to include in this video is the Weekday dress by Amy Scheer. So if you get this pattern, you can decide if you either want to make the dress version or the sweater version. And it also comes with 2 different sleeve options, so you can either opt for short sleeves or you can make the sleeves long. Now I think this is a very lovely pattern. I really like this lace raglan detail on the otherwise more or less simple dress. I think it looks so comfy and cozy, and I would love to make this one. Let's move on to a sock knitting pattern now, and it is the very popular Kura Socks by Miss Evil Knits. So I have made 1 pair so far, and this is it. So this is actually more of a recipe compared to a written pattern, and it comes in the form of video tutorials. It is available for free, and I'm going to put it in the description box for you. So those socks are knitted toe up, and Miss Evil Knits gives you several different options. So she includes 2 options for the stitch pattern on the leg and on the foot. So you could either do this slip stitch motif like I did here, or knit a simple stockinette sock. And she also includes 2 different options for the heel. I really like this pattern. She gives you tons of different options and also shows you different ways how you can use your scrap yarn. So if you have several different colors of Nutiden, small Nutiden balls laying around, she shows you how you can mold those together in a sock. So in the recipe, she recommends holding 2 strands of Nutiden yarn together. And what I did here is that I used different colorways from one of the surprise bags of Nutiden, and I held it together with 1 strand of a cream Plötulopi yarn. So this way I think you have this very nice watercolory effect, and the colorways blend nicely with each other, and I really like how these socks came out. The next knitting pattern that I wanted to show you is this Artemisia Shawl by Nele from Ravienna Knits. So this is a symmetrical triangular shawl that is knitted from the center outwards. She designed it to be knitted with 2 different colors of Nutiden yarn held single, but since it can be a bit tricky to work with only 1 strand of unspun yarn, she states in the pattern that you can add a strand of silk mohair if you are unsure about knitting with unspun yarn single-stranded. The pattern comes in 3 different sizes, and I really like the inspiration or the description she put on the Ravelry project page, which I'm going to read to you now. In the description she says, I named the pattern Artemisia because I personally found the knitting process very healing for dealing with some intense experiences during this time. The Artemisia plant as a universal healing plant is a perfect symbolic representation for me. I really liked it. It spoke to me, and I would love to make this pattern sometime in the future. So Nele has only a few patterns for sale at the moment, but a lot of them, I think pretty much all of them, were designed with Nutiden yarn. So if you like this shawl, I recommend that you have a look at her portfolio and see if you find something that you like. And now it's time to share my best tips and tricks with you when it comes to knitting with unspun yarn. And this is going to apply to Nutiden yarn, especially since I personally have the feeling that it is a bit more fragile than Plötulopi, for example. So if you are just starting out knitting with unspun yarn, I do not recommend that you hold the yarn single because it is way too fragile and it will break very easily. Instead, I recommend that you do one of the following things. So number 1, you could hold the yarn double like I did here for my Timepiece Cardigan. This will make it a lot easier to work with, and you will have a lot fewer breakages compared to holding it single. Another great option is to hold the Nutiden yarn together with 1 strand of silk mohair, and I'm going to give you a sneak peek of one of my current whips. So this is it here. And like I said, this is 1 strand of Nutiden together with 1 strand of silk mohair, and I find this very easy to work with. I did not have 1 breakage so far. The silk mohair gives the garment a very beautiful halo, and it is also so sturdy that you won't have to deal with a lot of breakages when you combine 2 of those yarns. And the third option is the one that I just showed you, and it is holding 1 strand of Nutiden yarn together with 1 strand of Plötulopi yarn from Istex. Since the Plötulopi yarn is a lot sturdier than the Nutiden yarn, you will have to deal with fewer breakages here as well, and I found it very easy to work with this yarn combination. So my next tip is about the knitting process itself. So if you want to work with Nutiden yarn, I recommend that you set the plate somewhere close to you and that you don't simply pull on the yarn, because, let me see, if you do that, it will come apart like nothing. So what I usually do is that I unwind a bit from the plate like this, and then I knit with this much, and then I unwind again. And if I do it that way, I usually don't have a lot of issues with the yarn breaking on me. And one more thing that I wanted to mention is that if you do enjoy working with unspun yarn, you should consider becoming a patron of Honor Air, who sell the Nutiden yarn. So in case you don't know this yet, if you become a patron, you get early access to their collections and sometimes even yarn colorways that are not going to be in the public shop update. And in addition, there are a lot of designers, some of them I already mentioned, but there are a lot more that design a lot with Nutiden yarn, and they very often offer discount codes to patrons of Honor och Air, and they sometimes even look for test knitters in the patron group. So if this is something that interests you, you should consider becoming a patron, but of course it does cost a monthly fee. So those are my best tips and tricks for knitting with unspun yarn. If you would like to know a bit more about the different brands who offer unspun yarn, I recommend that you have a look at this video. Until next time, bye guys!